It's wild.
I believe our American audience might have missed the tragic conclusion of this story about a week and a half ago. So please tell us what is going on with ostriches in Canada.
So I've been going nuts on this story. I had to Google to see when I initially got involved in that story. And Grok said I tweeted about it in late December 2024, but I could only find anything from January 2025. This was the story of the ostriches that had allegedly become infected with H5N1 in Canada. The CFIA, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, gets miraculously tipped off that there are infected birds at this farm because allegedly ducks flew over the farm, went into a pond, the birds got sick. Somebody tips off the CFIA. They come in and they say, you got to kill all of your birds, even the ones that survived the initial outbreak. So they contested that decision of the administrative body to the federal court, not of appeal yet, but the federal court. In April, May, the federal court says, not an inherently unreasonable decision from this Soviet-style administrative body. You got to go kill the birds, even though the ones that are alive survived and have been healthy for 4 or 5 months. They appeal to the Court of Appeal. And in August, the Court of Appeal unanimously says, yeah, the lower court was right. We don't interfere with the CFIA's decision. You got to kill these birds now, 397 of them, that have been healthy for now 8 months. They appeal to the Supreme Court, and in the interim, the CFIA, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, comes in, takes custody of the birds, occupies the farm, occupies the neighboring farm, or a garlic farm, and basically takes control of the ostriches until the Supreme Court rules on whether or not they take the case up to, they take the case. Supreme Court says no, and literally after 40 some odd days of occupation, they had set up this kill pen.
I believe I actually have a picture of that here.
It's a monstrosity.
Yeah, it's disturbing.
They set up they had set up this kill pen over the course of 40 days, 2 bales of hay wide, 3 bales or 4 bales high. They set up like perches for snipers. And the second the Supreme Court said we're not taking up the case, the protective order that was in effect until that time lapses. And I've been using 2 analogies. One is like alcoholics to an open bar, and like teenagers who just got told they could lose their virginity. They run in there and slaughter all of the ostriches in the dead of night. They just start popping off one shot after another. No warning. The farm owners are sitting there listening to bullets ringing out in the night. These people, bloodlust demons, slaughtered all of the birds. And they shot like 900 or 1,000 shots, and there were only, at that time, less than 300 ostriches left. We don't know what happened to the other ones. And they slaughtered all of them under the watchful eye of the Royal Canadian Mounted Gestapo, as I call them now, the RCMG. And the world was in an uproar for about a week and a half, 2 weeks, and then,
stopped caring.
The news cycle moved on.
Yeah.
And I realized I was emotionally invested in this. I did everything I could over the course of close to a year, and honestly and sincerely did not think it would end like this. I thought there'd be a happy ending. And I was on the phone with Katie, the daughter of the farm owner, while they're slaughtering the ostriches, and she's beside herself. Just like, you could hear gunshots in the distance, and they came in, killed all of them, left their carcasses out there to rot for a couple of days. They're still in blue bins. That whole area now is let's call it a quarantine. It's a hazardous zone that they've fenced off to the farm owners. They still don't have access to their property. And birds, migratory birds, are now like going through their ducks and whatever in the blood-soaked leftover mud slop that the cops left as they left a trail of disaster and slaughter.
Yeah, because I believe we were talking about this back when you first covered it. There's no good way to kill an ostrich. Like a bird that size, there's no way to kill them one at a time. So for them to roll out a firing squad, like load them into a tiny little pen and just gun them down. I believe they went through after they were done shooting, and any of them that were still alive but had been injured, they just decapitated.
That's crazy.
That was my understanding as well, and I flagged a picture and I said, hey, RCMP, why is this bird missing a head? And if it's missing a head, why? People are like, no, that's the anus, which it's possible. If it is, it's a prolapsed anus, and I'm not trying to be funny. The only reason you'd have a prolapsed anus is because of extreme pain and suffering. But no, they killed those birds over the course of 9 hours. And then there were some that you could hear them wailing, and they had to do it like a round in the next morning. And the whole thing is, it's absolute tyranny, because if the rationale was they were a risk, a vector for infection of H5N1, 11 months out of surviving the infection, that's the last thing you'd want to do, is spill their guts and gore all over the place and let birds and not what are they called, scavengers come in and just pick away at the parts. It's the last thing you'd want to do.
There's something interesting here that it kind of reminded me of COVID a little bit with the debate of natural immunity. That was like the big thing that kind of hit me here, where they're just trying to deny any kind of natural immunity. These birds could be very beneficial for research. If they survive the virus, they could potentially carry antibodies, and you could research them. You wouldn't just get rid of their bodies like this.
You're one step ahead of my theory. They were doing research on these birds as of 2021 for COVID antibodies, and my operating theory is that this was a big pharma or globalist heist. And when the CFIA took custody over this, there were supposedly 330 ostriches that they had care of. By the end of it, there were nowhere near 330. Throughout the 40 days, blue bins were going in and out. And everyone was saying, like, where are the ostriches going? Because here's some shots. We can't count 300 at all. And by the end of it, there were more roosters to hens, where at the beginning it was like 2 to 3 hens to the rooster. By the end of it, it was 1 to 1, if not more roosters to hens. Hens are more scientifically valuable. And call me crazy, I believe that they were smuggling out either live or dead the hens so that Big Pharma can go and find whatever antibodies these birds had, because they had antibodies from the H5N1, and they were going to use it for scientific research. I was on with Alex Jones trying to get the world to go crazy over this, and he says, when I mentioned that they allegedly got infected by a flock of duck, and then a mysterious whistleblower calls up the CFIA, he's like, government setup. When they're there that quickly, it's because they were always there. Like, good point. And he's like, yeah, and if they wanted to, if it was hypothetically a gain-of-function H5N1 that they wanted to be more viral, and it wasn't viral because the majority of them survived, you want to kill the survivors so that nobody knows where this H5N1 came from if it was gain-of-function tinkered with. So it's either destroy the evidence or seize it for the benefit of Big Pharma, but that is my underlying theory, for the benefit of Big Pharma, which explains why Pierre Poilievre, the pussy leader of the Conservative Party, didn't say a damn thing, because I believe he's as much in bed with Big Pharma as are the Liberals.
And I believe in some of the research I was doing for this, there are a lot of medical applications for ostrich eggs as well. They've found antibodies as far back as COVID of things that could be effective against. And I saw some reports that they were also taking all the eggs. They're saying, oh, the eggs came from the infected birds, so we got to cart off the eggs in big buckets, just like they were doing with the bodies.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
I mean, that theory tracks.
It makes no sense if it was H5N1 and they're still potentially shedding 11 months out of infection. And by the way, none of the birds were ever tested. None of the birds they killed were ever tested. In fact, if you tested them, it was a $200,000 fine and up to 6 months in jail per test. The only birds that were ever tested were 2 dead carcasses in December 2024 with a PCR anal swab cycled to 40. So but stealing the eggs afterwards? And incidentally, I've eaten ostrich. I've eaten ostrich eggs. I have an entire playlist on YouTube. Viva Ostrich.
Tastes pretty good.
There is something interesting about ostrich eggs. I should fact check myself. I'm fairly certain that even people who are allergic to regular eggs are oftentimes not allergic to ostrich eggs.
This is perfect for me because I get terrible migraines from regular eggs.
Let me check that while we do this.
Because I'm going to take one, and if I get a migraine, I'm coming after you.
Don't want people. 4 people died after testing their allergies. It's either ostrich eggs or duck eggs or both. But they're unique in their these particular eggs for the antibodies that they were potentially researching, because they were doing research with a Japanese scientist in the context of COVID. Post-COVID, because the whole farm had to shut down to the public and they found another use. So 2021, there's an article saying that this farm and these eggs have potential antibodies for COVID. It was a big pharma heist. It's the only thing that explains the ostrich bloodlust that the CFIA and their president, Paul McKinnon, no one should forget these people's names. Don't do anything stupid or illegal. They should be shunned for the rest of their lives. They're not welcome among civilized people anymore. And the RCMP sat there like a bunch of armed Gestapo agents and facilitated the slaughter.
We've
By the
seen
way,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, you're half right. Chicken, turkey, duck, and goose eggs, they have a high cross-reactivity when it comes to allergens. And then ostrich and emu eggs are less reactive. So probably if you're allergic to chicken eggs, you're probably not allergic.
Okay, good. No, that was
I'm going to try
that was my
ostrich.
memory. Say it again.
I'm going to try ostrich eggs.
Do it. Well, it's also, they are deliciously fluffy. Okay. One ostrich egg has the equivalent of about 22 or 24 eggs in it. It's okay. I did a video where I hard boiled an ostrich egg, and then to get through the shell is about as thick as a toonie. You're Canadian, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
It's a thick thing. So I had to take a saw around, and then I cracked open the entire. It was just a massive hard boiled egg. Not the best way to eat it. Omelets are much better.
Well, if you want to make an omelet, you're going to have to break a few eggs.
No, it's just an abject disaster. The RCMP, after they slaughtered the ostriches, left their carcasses out for a day or two. They finally leave, and as they're leaving, they're just tracking all of that tainted blood, tainted mud, to the extent it was tainted, all over the place.
Yeah,
they take
spreading it everywhere.
They took the hay, the blood-soaked hay, or they say it wasn't blood-soaked, but it was from the pen, and they're just pitchforking it, spreading it across the neighboring fields.
I have a question for you. I'm so curious. Sorry. Just do you feel like the Canadian response to this from the population itself is very weak?
It's not even weak. It affirms it. Like the amount of, I say that Canadians are the most brainwashed, the most propagandized people outside of North Korea, and maybe even more so because North Koreans know that they're getting propagandized. The amount of people who I know they're not bots who came out and said, "Well, it had to be done. Well, what's the big deal? They ate the ostriches." People who don't know a damn thing except what they read in the CBC, and the amazing thing, the CBC during this occupation, well, they're saying, well, one ostrich died because it got sick. It's like the ostrich that died, named Spirit, was because the CFIA couldn't feed it, wasn't giving it water, wasn't giving it electrolytes. They starved it to death. But then the media says, well, look, there's sick ostriches dying, to create the impression in the mind of a brainwashed rabble that the birds were sick and needed to be culled. The Canadians are the most propagandized people that I know in Western civilization.
Yeah, I did a study on mass psychosis. We ran some social experiments. And the Canadian population is very susceptible because one of the standard things you need is high trust in government or high trust in an authority. And I've just witnessed it. I mean, Canada's cooked. It's done.
It's it's not even a joke anymore. Is in Canada, being a good citizen means doing everything for the greater good and listening to the government, like in New Zealand, but even to a greater degree. But it's deference to authority is what Canadians identify as what makes them nice, but also superior to Americans. Like that's the whole basis of comparison. Oh, those Americans, Wild West, gun to, they're all a bunch of yeehaw Yankees. Like, first of all, yeah, that's what it means when you don't trust the government and you don't rely on the government for your security. Canadians are the exact opposite. It's a self-fulfilling sort of culture-defining attitude, and it's what gets you locked in your frickin' house for 5.5 months during COVID. And those who leave have the free spirit, and those who stay and say, "Govern me harder, Daddy, make Canada what it is."
And on that point, I saw you post a tweet, might have been yesterday, day before, where you showed a picture of the kill pen set up with those bales of hay, and you said, "This is the Canadian people in here. This is what they want for you." And I think that's really important to try to drive home as you're trying to communicate to your former countrymen there that, like, this is what the Canadian government does to its people. The trucker protest is the perfect example of anyone who dared to question the government became an enemy of the state. They were debanked. They were vilified in the media. They basically had every level of authority thrown at them to try to get them to fall back in line. So while it might seem crazy that, they'd never herd their people into a kill pen, they've basically been doing the same thing in a legal and governmental sense for decades.
Yeah, well, my tweet was a more nuanced. There was somebody who said this is what they wanted to do to the vaccinated during COVID. Mine was just, if this, my post was the image, and it said, if this is what keeping the peace looks like, you're on the side of terrorists. But no, they did round up Canadians and put them in detention centers. They just called them government, what do they call it? Government designated quarantine facilities. And they stuck them in hotels where women got sexually assaulted, where people were not getting food because they couldn't accommodate it. And then they charged them for the privilege. The
Canadian government has removed parents from their children and arrested them for simply disagreeing with their pronouns. It's not exactly the most free place in the world. It's pretty crazy.
From the standpoint of civil rights, this is the scariest thing I've seen. Like, I never seen government overreach. Because one thing I've seen it like systematically of things that you hear, but I never seen it visually in place at this level. Like, if you just imagine if there was a virus bad enough to excuse killing humans. This could be a building that they're quarantining. Like, you went to Canada recently, right?
Yeah. My anniversary last year.
All right. Isn't it doesn't it feel,
British Columbia.
Yeah. Banff National Park. Yeah.
Doesn't it feel like a liminal place? Like, you walk around, there's a McDonald's, there's Starbucks and people that kind of look like American, and you're walking around. But the rights that you have there and the way everything is organized is just I think
it looks like America. And then you see, we're 5 years out of COVID. I make the joke every time I cross the border. It's like entering an insane asylum. People are still wearing face masks. Everybody, and most people look angry, and they are angry. There's homelessness like you've never seen, drug addiction like you've never seen, and the only coping mechanism for Canadians is to say, well, at least it's not Donald Trump. I mean, you've got a 3 passport-carrying globalist whore of a prime minister who's destroying the country, nationalizing private property, slaughtering animals for the sake of it, and people think, well, at least it's not Trump. At least there's no mean tweets and mean words.
It's crazy that even during the trucker protests, people don't remember it. They weren't just arresting and debanking the truckers. They went after people who just supported or donated to the truckers. Like my friend's bank account was frozen during that time. And a lot of my Canadian friends were like, well, he shouldn't have gotten involved. Well, he should. They have zero understanding of the long-term consequences of what they're bringing on. I mean, we just keep seeing it happening. It's obviously cycling. It's like the government comes in once every year and says, hey, we're just going to remind you, we can overreach. We could do whatever we want. And you're not going to do anything about it.
No, and it was all ratified by the Rouleau Commission. They froze bank accounts. What was amazing is people like taking people from the airports and whisking them off to government-designated quarantine facilities where they didn't have time to consult with counsel or their spouses, locking them in a room and then charging them $2,000 for the privilege. Luckily, a court came down and said, yeah, doing that without allowing them to consult an attorney was a violation of civil rights, but the entire thing itself was reasonably justified for a virus which, fill in the blanks. In Quebec, this was one of my red lines in the sand where we left. They passed a bill C-16 or whatever it was that amended the Youth Protection Act to eliminate parental supremacy as the overarching principle of the Youth Protection Act, which means the government determines what's in the best interest of the child, not the parent. So, but greater good, security, at least we're not Americans, and meanwhile, it's North Korea of the West.
Yeah, and we saw something similar play out in the United States. Remember when the Biden administration was culling millions of chickens over equally dubious claims of bird flu and various other infections? That was why eggs were so expensive. Most people seem to forget that, but the reason you couldn't get eggs, that they peaked around like $8 for a dozen eggs, wasn't because of inflation or any of the other things, or it wasn't greedy grocery stores price gouging struggling Americans. It was because the Biden administration was killing chickens by the millions over the exact same thing, claims of bird flu that had never really been verified.
Nobody's died from the bird flu. There might have been one person. Nobody's died from the bird flu.
Can I go one step? Like, I was doing research because eggs got out of hand. I was like, how hard could it be to keep chickens? All right. Apparently, it's not that hard. But if you look at the zoning laws, regulations, and everything, the government makes it incredibly hard for a normal individual to have a chicken because they're very efficient for food. You know what I mean? The last thing they want is something that is not hard to keep, that you can keep in your garden and can keep you fed with protein. It's very scary. Maybe more.
One of the earliest red pill moments for me with food and how the food industry screws us is when I realized that eggs don't need to be refrigerated. Like if you keep chickens in your backyard, you can go harvest eggs and leave them on the counter and they will be fine. The reason you have to refrigerate eggs is because they wash and treat them before they sell them.
Yeah.
And that removes the protective coating. That means they have to be refrigerated or they rot faster.
It's not like that in all countries. How is it in Canada? Are eggs refrigerated or not?
Refrigerated.
Well, in most of South America and I think also Japan, eggs are never refrigerated. You know what I mean?
They don't have the same
Process.
membrane.
treatment process for the food they do there. So it's one thing after another. Getting screwed by Big Pharma, getting screwed by food.
Yeah, so I have two autoimmune diseases.
Which ones?
I have Crohn's disease and I have psoriasis, which turned into psoriatic arthritis, which then they said was somehow affecting my inner ear and I'm losing my hearing, all types of weird stuff. But when I go travel to Portugal and I eat the food in Portugal, my psoriasis gets better. And I have milk, and I can't have milk here. I get very ill if I have milk here. The meats I don't have any reactions to the meat there, and my whole body clears up, my digestion gets better. And then I come back here, and I don't know what's in the food here, but within 2 weeks of being here, I hold water, my psoriasis flares up, I get migraines, and I'm like, there's something going on in the food in the United States.
And he can testify to this. Within a year that I got here, I put on 90 pounds. Within a year, eating the same stuff, same level of exercise, same everything.
Yeah, it's how many people did you hear 20 years ago talking about autoimmune diseases and like chronic illness?
It's not clear if you just start talking about it the older you get. And like, how many kids did I hear talking about?
No, but it's definitely grown tremendously. Like colon cancer in young adults has tremendously skyrocketed.
It's undeniable. I was just looking up to see how many human deaths have been caused by the H5N1, and I'm fairly certain it's none, if not one, because in Canada there have been none. But no, you talk about the culling of the birds. They're doing it in Canada too. And everyone always wonders, like, how could 20, 30 million people have starved to death in Soviet Russia? How could 50 million people have starved to death under Mao's regime? It's very easy. You kill off all the food for some stupid government-determined, baseless reason.
Yeah.
That's how you lead to mass starvation.
Yeah.
And so, egg prices are one thing. But you get to the next step of this type of socialistic, autocratic, totalitarian business, and people start to starve to death if they haven't already started as a result of it.
And then knowledge. Like, what was the stat? Like, most kids didn't know where cow milk came from. Like, they didn't know where milk came from. Like, there's some people that are hopeless. They don't know where their food comes from. Like, a lot of people that you just dropped anywhere without food, they couldn't figure it out. You know, like, it's very sad, the state of food these days.
And it's a very sad state of affairs in Canada. I believe that farm was in operation for 30 plus years. These ostriches have been basically family pets for decades.
35, some of those ostriches were 35 years old, 300 plus pound. People are like, well, they're going to get compensated as though they were chickens. First of all, they're not chickens. Chickens don't live 35 years, and you don't have animals like that. And you can't compensate as though they are a bird that they're not. And second of all, how much is your dog worth? I mean, it's so stupid. Well, they're going to compensate you for killing your dog. They're going to, if they haven't already started, go after dogs, cats that come back with a tainted bird. They're apparently the rumors, and I hadn't been able to independently verify it, is that they were already going after a when they rescue animals and they put them in these places.
The pound? Or
No.
Shelters?
An outdoor preserve.
Yeah.
They were going after a preserve because birds allegedly infected some of the rescue animals there. They've done it to cattle. They're going to come for your dogs and your cats, and then you're going to have to sit there and shut your mouth and say it's for the greater good.
Yeah.
And here's $50 for the cremation of your dog's corpse.
If the government comes to my house and tries to take my dog, that's where I'm not going to say.
That's where people are going to go John Wick on the government.
I mean, remember that Peanut the squirrel helped shape the course of the 2024
Absolutely.
election.
And this, in Canada, it's like, it'll help shape the next elections. The Conservatives haven't said anything yet. The Conservatives haven't said anything yet. They are useless, and they're worse than useless.
Well, the Conservatives in Canada are not equivalent to Conservatives in the United States.
No,
they're still more left-leaning.
Not going to say it, but that's your fault, guys. In Chile, they just ran the elections this weekend. They had to get rid of it. I think it took 2 election cycles to get rid of all the old school, like conservative people, and get rid of all of them. They had to unseat every single one of them and bring in a new right to get things done. But as long as those guys that seem conservative, but they're not, like it happened in America here too. You have all these rhinos that are conservative by name, and you just need to vote them out and get rid of them. They're the worst. They're worse than actual leftists, because leftists, you know where they're going. These guys, they're traitors. They're the worst people. Unbelievable.
I'm just looking it up. So apparently, throughout the life of whatever they refer to as the avian flu, 476 globally people have died. Since 2020, 6 confirmed human deaths from H5N1, according to WHO data.
Yeah, that's absurd.
We've locked down for more, so maybe we should be afraid of that, I guess.
I think more people have choked to death on butterflies in 5 years. I'm going to check that up.
Probably more people probably have
Very difficult stat to find.
Definitely from like bees, allergic reactions. All
COVID. Like, how many people under 20 died? And they looked everyone up. Like, they literally destroyed their life. Like, the developing years from, 16 to 20 are the most important years. And when you meet your girlfriend, when you go out, when you test the barriers of what's possible, when you drive your bike fast or whatever. And they destroyed this generation. And I think it was like 1% or less than 1% death rate in people under 20. Like, I might get fact checked right now.
Well,
No, I'm going for the
COVID's a
butterflies.
very, very interesting thing for me in terms of witnessing the long-term effects of it, because social behavior is completely different post-COVID, especially for people within that age range. They're more isolated. They don't date as much. They're more online than ever before. Their entire identity is now separate from human interaction. You look at kids who are like, imagine you were 6 years old when COVID hit. Your next 3 years were like kept away from society.
Right.
Those are major developmental years in terms of how you perceive the world.
Yeah, you might get totally radicalized and turns into a trans furry loving person who has an online personality. Like
Wow,
that's where
amazing that you bring that up.
Who would think there's another story involving that?
So if you like this clip, click right here. And if you want to see more like it, click right here. Stay angry, Patriots.